Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Indy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one! Another one! Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Works out by Burke, bounces into Cody, puts it up, scores!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, hello everybody, and happy Monday to you. Welcome in to Indiana Sports Beat. It is another week here in the summertime. Charlie is off traveling today, but we've got plenty of others to fill in. Dustin Schutte is going to stop by. Kevin Brockway is going to stop by. Jim Reamer will stop by. There are tons to talk about. Football commitments for Indiana. You've got the Top 100 showcase that happened over the weekend. The U.S. Open. It's Prime Day. Kyle Schwarber ties a Major League Baseball record, home run record. The NBA, lots going on there. Just tons of sports action over the weekend. And what heck of a storm. We were without power. Man, I was hoping we were going to have power back by today at some point. It had gotten that bad, but it is back, and we're here. Hope you're doing well. Welcome in, everybody. Everybody joining us on YouTube as well. If you're not listening to us on radio, we appreciate you joining us. Jumping in. Hope you had a great weekend. What did you do to fill your time? Are you hitting up on Prime Day? That's a big time for everybody, but it's not, as producer John the producer said earlier, it's not quite what it used to be, because now everybody else is jumping in on the bandwagon, and you can get stuff everywhere, but it's just something that's fun. But man, did you watch that U.S. Open? I know everyone's not a golfer, but the U.S. Open is probably it's just set up to be as tough as it can be. That's why the final score is 5-6 under, which is what it was yesterday. I think he won at 6 under, right? And it was going back and forth. I've never seen a golf. I can't recall one that just flopped. The leaders just moving around so much as they did yesterday. And talk about, folding up your tent. Bryson DeChambeau, he was leading at the turn, which means after 9, for those of you who aren't golfers, which means he only had 9 holes left, he was leading. He ended up, the next 9 was just a travesty. I don't even know what he shot. Like 8 over or something. It was crazy. Then I think we had a streaker. As Tim said, did you see the guy run on the course at the U.S. Open? Oh, he hit some balls before an official and a golf cart tackled him. Heard about that. I saw a mention of a streaker, I thought. So things getting a little crazy out there out in San Diego where they played that. But yeah, man, that U.S. Open was whoo. But the good thing about that is, if you're watching that and you play, that looked like the regular people out there. The trouble they were having hitting it, the rough is so rough, and the shots that they were having to hit, it made the rest of us feel kind of normal, feel kind of good. So there's that. Kyle Schwarber, man, oh man, is he on fire. Kyle Schwarber is in fuego. He tied a Major League Baseball record over the weekend with 5 home runs in 2 days. Talk about lighting it up. Man, you would think after the first couple, it's not like he's not known as a home run hitter, because he already is. But it's either that or pitch around him. They didn't do that. But here's what it sounded like.
Career home. And Schwarber's going to hit one out that way. See you later. Oh, Schwarber, deep right center. See you later. Now has 3 game leading off career home runs. Might this be number 4? Opposite field. See you later. Hughes on one. Low laser, right field. See you later. That ball is drilled deep to left. Going back is Smith. It is out of here.
Get up there. Get up there. They're waiting for you.
How about that? Man, 5 homers. That's crazy. Why do you keep pitching to him? I'm serious. It's not like he hasn't drilled some of the longest home runs ever. He was dressed in a tutu, it looked like. Who was that? The guy on the course. I missed that. Yeah, the guy that ran on the course. Guys on YouTube are still talking about that. Was there a streaker there? So is that who was dressed like a tutu? The guys are commenting on YouTube. I did not see that. I saw mention of it. John, the producer, did you see that? I did not. Was there a streaker? So he was just dressed in a.
You see, I wasn't aware of any sort of streaker, but it wouldn't surprise me of anything like that. So,
U.S. Open. That wasn't the guy that hit the balls, was it? It's a shirtless Open fan. Oh, he was shirt. All right. So it's the same guy. He was shirtless. I don't think he was streaking, was he? I'm trying to pull that up, but well, no, it looks like he's got some kind of shorts on. So they never showed it on TV. That's the thing. He ran out onto the course. He's got club in hand. He lays down a couple of balls, takes a swing, nice stroke, does a little dance, waiting for the guys to come tackle him as the security people surround him. I don't know what he thought he was going to get out of that other than, he's going to take another shot. Yeah, nice. He's got a good stroke. Drops the club. I mean, they're ordering him down, and then he takes off running. It looks like a typical streaker. And who's going to get this guy tackled? The guy off the golf cart. There you go. Perfect. Down he goes. What are you going to gain out of that if you're a kid, I understand because you're stupid, I guess. Generally, these aren't kids that do this. That's the thing that cracks me up. They're not kids. They're adults. So what in the world? It's crazy. People are crazy. NBA going on the playoffs. How about Atlanta? Nate McMillan. Hello. Former coach of the Pacers who was fired. All he's done is take Atlanta to the Eastern Conference Finals now after they upset top-seeded Philadelphia yesterday. And that didn't go down without a lack of a love fest for Philadelphia. Ben Simmons is getting a lot of grief from his own teammates. Doc Rivers, coach, Joel Embiid, raised doubts about their confidence in Ben Simmons after the Game 7. That's not good if you're a player. Doc Rivers doesn't know if Ben Simmons can lead a championship team. Now, that's either a coach just trying to fire you up, or I don't think he can. I mean, you're talking about a guard who cannot shoot free throws, which that's some serious issues there. That's a problem. Lot else to go on over the weekend that we're going to be talking about today. The Top 100 Showcase happened over the weekend. Coaches out watching players for the first time. Mike Woodson, Dane Fife was out. I know. Also, Indiana gets some gigantic commitments on the football side of things. So things are going pretty nicely along that lines as we hit into the summer. And wondering for the football side, commitments. That didn't happen last year. The success of this team has not shown itself in the commitment side yet, and it's starting to now. I knew it was going to take a bit because you had the COVID to get through, but they've got to continue. They've got to win a bowl game. They can't just this has got to become a regular thing. I think Indiana's going to have yet another successful season for that recruitment wheel to really tilt in their direction. They're doing fine from a recruiting standpoint. Don't get me wrong. They're doing great. They're doing even better with player development. You've got guys that are coming to Indiana from all over. But I think they can start getting more and more higher recruits after another successful season. Winning a bowl game would certainly help. Should have won probably the last couple, but that is what it is. No questions there. How did your all's weekend go? So everybody will talk about it on YouTube. The guy got his 15 minutes of fame. Oh yeah, talking to Who's for Life, talking about that guy. The Mullen family keeps coming to IU. Yeah, we're going to be talking about his commitment to Indiana. That was the last in a long line of Mullins, man, that are great football players. And I had a pretty good feeling he was going to come to Indiana after the success of Taiwan. And what he has done here, he's become an All-American here. So you can go to Indiana and be an All-American. That sells a lot in itself. And they produce All-Americans. These aren't guys that were known as All-Americans. And so that's very attractive to players that are coming here. And that's why they will continue to come. Now that production has to continue on the field, and I expect it to do so. But it has to. They have to continue winning, and they have to continue competing, not just winning, competing at the top of the Big Ten East. And that is let's be honest, that's a much tougher thing than anybody realizes, because you're competing against one of probably the top 3 programs in all of college football right now. You've got Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State, which those 3 programs are just churning at the top. And when that's unfortunately, and then not only in Indiana's conference, but their division, makes life tough. But life's tough, and you got to deal with it. Things change, though. I think that Michigan is just not going to return to being Michigan right now. That's going to allow Indiana to continue to succeed in that division. I think that Penn State is always going to succeed, but I think Indiana is on even par with Penn State right now. And I think that they can hopefully get by them. They're going to have to go play them on the road this year, but that's going to be a big game. We got lots more coming up. Dustin Schutte is going to join us. We're going to talk about the football commitments. Kevin Brockway will join us. Jim Reamer on the show today as well. Plenty more. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat. Back with that after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking... Well, we got through that segment.
It was good, too. It wasn't not like you were BSing or anything. You had a lot to talk about.
Plenty to get to.
That's what happens when you come back from a weekend.
Who is on at 9:20?
It's supposed to be Schutte.
Dustin Schutte. The Hoosier Daily. McFadden already named to McWalter Camp preseason All-American. Second team.
And that just goes to show exactly what you're always talking about. He was a 2-star recruit, and look what he's turned into. Micah McFadden. Played with Thomas Allen, too, down in Plant, I believe.
Oh, and Grace Berger won gold. USA Basketball wins the AmeriCup. Grace Berger, member of that team, won a gold medal.
Here's Dustin.
Hello, Dustin Schutte. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Nice little tidy weekend in football. Some nice little commitments.
I know. Big commitments. What's the other kid's name? Isaiah Jones?
There you go. That's who I couldn't remember, was Isaiah Jones.
And the linebacker.
Travell.
I say Travell Mullen.
The final of the three Mullen brothers. The first one went to Clemson, correct?
Yes.
Yep. And he plays isn't in the NFL right now. And he's got a cousin. You may have heard of him. His name's Lamar Jackson.
Oh yeah, I never remember that.
Did you know that, John?
I think I've heard that, but I didn't remember that. You reminded me when you said
it. Jones is the number 45 player in the state of Indiana.
Oh gosh, that's low.
Wait a minute. Why does it say that? And it
doesn't-
says he went to
that
London,
doesn't sound
Ohio.
right.
He's from
He went to
Ohio.
Ohio. He's from Ohio. That doesn't make sense.
There you go. That's probably it's probably misstated. He's probably number 45 in Ohio.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and bring us back in.
Lunch, hanging with friends, or on the golf course, Sam's Restaurants has multiple locations and something for everyone. Sam's Restaurant in Fishers has homemade coffee cakes and much more. Sam's Place in Broad Ripple has wings, tender steaks, and seafood. Sam's Ale House in Carmel and on 86th Street in Indy have a long list of craft beers and all of the right foods to go with. Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Go ahead and come back. The music didn't play for some reason. Just go ahead and go.
All right, welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat, here on this Monday. Get a special joining by Dustin Schutte. We had some big football signings or commitments over the weekend. Dustin, big for Indiana. We've been talking about when are some of these bigger commitments going to start landing from their success. I'd say this is start of that. Trayvon Mullen, of course, had the brother here, but let's talk about the linebacker first. This guy's from Ohio, and that's a good signing right there.
Yeah, because you look at, Ohio is one of those states that, you look at places like Florida, Texas, Georgia, Louisiana, California, some of these big names with a lot of recruits. And so Ohio a lot of times gets passed over, but it's a great recruiting ground. If you follow Letterman Rowe and Jeremy Birmingham, they recently saw this kid, and he's a guy who's, his stock is rising right now. And, I always go back to, you look at these kids in the top 50 from Ohio. Mark D'Antonio at Michigan State used to make a killing. He won Big Ten titles with these kind of players. So he may not be the highest ranked guy, but he's one of those diamonds in the rough, I think, that you're going to find. Those are the kind of players you want, that grit. You want those guys who get passed over, those guys who don't get offers from Ohio State and some of those bigger schools that they're looking to play for. So I really like this pickup. I think he's a solid linebacker. Again, Ohio is a state that has got a ton of recruiting talent. It just gets passed over because a lot of times you're looking at places like Florida, Georgia, California, Texas, those spots. But this Isaiah Jones kid, there's been a lot of talk about him. I think he's in the lower 3-star end of the pool, but he's going to bring a lot to the table, I think.
You know what he reminds me of? A guy named Michael McFadden, who just all he did was get turned into an All-American here and is already now this year on the Walter Camp preseason All-American watch list. He came here in a similar situation. They come here with a chip on their shoulder, I think.
Yeah.
Those guys from, say, Ohio or Texas or Florida that like, oh, you don't think I'm that good? Okay, well, let me show you. And that is what I think you get out of those guys like that. And, man, what better would you want than somebody with a chip on their shoulder than feeling like it should be given to me? So, yeah, I love those guys, man. And that's why it creates more of a blue-collar atmosphere. It's always you got to work harder atmosphere. And those kids, that's the Tom Allen type, man. That just fits right in with what Tom Allen has built in Indiana.
Yeah, and we talk about this on this show quite a bit, that Indiana needs to take that bump up in recruiting, right? They need to get more of the 4-star and maybe get some 5-star guys, or at least one 5-star guy every few years. But you have to have these kind of guys as your foundation. You look at a place like Iowa. Kirk Ferentz has made his whole career out of turning 2- and 3-star guys into NFL prospects. And we've talked about even the development at places like Indiana. we're starting to see these are guys who aren't highly recruited, but they're getting looks at the NFL. And if they're not drafted, at least they're going to be signing free agent contracts as an undrafted free agent. So I think that this is the kind of potential you have. I think Tom Allen is confident, not just in himself and in the program, but you look at the staff hires. We talked about Charlton Warren, a guy who worked at places like Georgia and Florida. He's got that SEC experience. They have a great staff to be able to develop that talent. And as you mentioned, if you come in with a guy who's got a chip on his shoulder, hey, I didn't get offered by Ohio State or Penn State or Michigan. I'm going to go into Indiana, and I'm going to make those schools regret not recruiting me. And so I think having that mindset and having that thought that, I can go to Indiana, I can do big things, I can get to the NFL, or at least I can be an all Big Ten player and all American. As you mentioned, Michael McFadden, a great example. You look at Indiana's roster, there aren't a ton of, big time four-star and five-star guys on the roster. It's a bunch of three-star guys, and they were able to go 6-1 last year in the regular season, go toe-to-toe with Ohio
without their
State.
number one quarterback.
Without their number one quarterback. And, those are the kind of guys that Indiana's never going to be a school that competes with Ohio State and Michigan from a recruiting standpoint. You can improve, but you're not going to be at that level in the top 2 or 3 probably ever. So to get guys like this and Isaiah Jones, a linebacker with a chip on his shoulder, out of a good state of Ohio that plays really good high school football, I think that's a big win.
Yeah, because Michigan right now still gets those recruits.
Yes.
As bad as they've been, as much pressure as there is on Jim Harbaugh, as much talk as there is, they're still getting those recruits. Not all of them and not as many as they were getting, but they're still getting them. And that matters because it still gives them a shot. But it also takes away from a school like Indiana who could land a kid like that to where they're like, not necessarily that's a kid that would have gone here, but I'm just, as long as there's a school in your division that is still getting those recruits, and it is. And you've also got Penn State and you've got Michigan State. So Indiana has got a tough road to hoe in the Big Ten East because you're competing against some of the most iconic programs in college football. And that's not going to change. Like you said, Penn State is never not going to be Penn State. Ohio State is never not going to be Ohio State. Michigan's just not going to not be Michigan. Now Michigan State is one of those, they could work their way out and kind of are working on that right now. They're working themselves out of that top 4. Indiana has worked their way into the top 4 right now. Can they stay there? And that's the battle. Can you stay, not only stay there, but elevate yourself? Because like I said, Ohio State, it's just tough to move. They're a semi-pro team. I mean, however you want to call it, they just are. I mentioned earlier, Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama. They're at a different level. They just are. Their programs are. Their facilities are. Everything is just at a different level, and that is not changing anytime soon.
No, and I think what Indiana should probably look at is a school like, or a program like a Wisconsin or like an Iowa, because again, you look at their recruiting and it's not like, yeah, they might have a top 15 or 20 class every now and then, but usually they're recruiting in the 30s and the 40s. They get a lot of 3- and 4-star guys. You want to have that development factor because that's where you're going to be able to make up some of the ground on some of these programs. I mean, you go back, look at Iowa 2 seasons ago, 2019, they go 10-3. They had a rough start in 2020, and then they go 6-2. Why can't Indiana be like that? Why can't Indiana get some of these 3-star guys and get some of those 4 and maybe a 5-star guy who help them to compete with teams like Ohio State at the top of the Big Ten, the teams like Penn State? I mean, I think Indiana's in a really good situation right now. And we've already saw, we're going to talk about another guy here in Travell Mullen, who's a big-time recruit for them, a 4-star guy. And it makes me wonder too, Jim, and I'm just going to throw this out there. Tywan Mullen is an NFL caliber guy. Does he stick around to play, 1 season with his brother? I mean, that's another factor there. You don't know that that's going to be the case. He's got to do what's in his best interest. We have no idea how the 2021 season is going to play out, but it's something to factor in there. So just the fact that you are on these radars, you get Dason McCullough, you're able to get Donovan McCulley, a big-time in-state recruit. I mean, we're seeing this. You've talked about it too, where you can just see the chart. It started out as 2- and 3-star guys, and now you're starting to see that trickle down and elevate to get 3- and 4-star guys, and eventually they'll get a 5-star guy. I really believe that. But there's no reason that when you look at a school like an Iowa or Wisconsin, that Indiana can't fit that mold, that they can't consistently be in bowl games. They can't consistently be recruiting in the 30s and the 40s, and then they can't be competing for a Big Ten title or an East Division title once every 4 to 5 years. And I know you look at the history, losing his program in college football history, and it indicates that may not be the case. But, Tom Allen's done a magical job in just 4 years. And if you continue to get this kind of talent mixed with those players, those 3-star guys, the Isaiah Joneses, the Micah McFaddens of the world who come in with a chip on their shoulder, who want to work hard, who want to prove everybody else wrong, it's a great recipe for success. And this is where, again, we talk about the LEO culture is perfect at Indiana. And it's starting to translate not only on the field, but on the recruiting trail.
Yeah. Mullen, Tywan Mullen's brother, Trayvon, I didn't know. I thought that he may end up here just because of the success that Tywan had. He became an All-American. What more could you ask for? I didn't know if he was going to want to. Sometimes they want to make their own path, but it is not about that here. You can be your own person here, or at Indiana. I shouldn't say here, at Indiana. But it is because he said it felt like family, and that's the whole deal. What they're making it is a team. And if you've ever played on a team, that is ultimately the ultimate importance. If you're not together, you're apart. And again, I cannot overstate getting 125 guys to be on the same page is crazy, because you've got 125 personalities, 125 people that have goals. Those goals cannot all be in the same direction, but they've gotten it to become that, at least for the team. And that is amazing. That's part of the amazing thing that we've seen Tom Allen do, though. But I just don't think that can be overstated. Man, you're talking about 125, 18, 19, and 20-year-old kids that you're getting to come together and play for each other. It's remarkable. And but they still need, that has been great to see, but now everybody wants to see that next level, but it takes time. I mean, let's stop and look at, this has not been a quick rise here. I mean, or a short, Tom Allen's been, this is what, his 4th year as head coach? Or going into his 4th season as head coach, I think?
Going
or
into
fifth. So, and never been a head coach. So he started from scratch, where virtually everyone, including myself, doubted that he could do that. There was no way he was going to be able. And so not only did he start from scratch, he was starting at scratch with everybody doubting him. And man, to be there where he is, it's remarkable. I can't say it enough how remarkable of a job that he's done and doing.
Well, and it's not even, this is important to recruits. There's no doubt about that. And not every recruit, his message is not going to land with every recruit. He knows that. But I mean, it's the same thing as you look at Minnesota and that row the boat culture. The people buy into that, and that's. But
that's important. A stick to me.
LEO is too. If you
no, LEO is weird. I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
but I think, and I get it, and I don't think that he doesn't mean it, the row the boat thing, but I think that's more of a. The LEO is more of a life, man. It's a how they live every day. Right. But I'm not up in Minnesota, but I think that's a little bit more of a shtick, row the boat thing. But it's cool. But
the point of that is that when Dylan McCullough left the Kansas City Chiefs to come to Indiana, he talked about culture. When Charlton Warren left Florida or Georgia to come to Indiana, he talked about culture. And you're starting to hear these recruits talk about culture. So that's what matters. It's not just relating to the players, you're relating to your staff. So not only has Tom Allen, had young people buy into this message, he has full-grown adults buying into this message and wanting to be a part of that. And that's absolutely huge. I mean, the other big thing to me about Tom Allen is, and there's a lot of coaches that are like this, He has Kalen DeBoer come in for one season, run the offense, and he gets a head coaching job. He has Kane Womack come in, run the defense for 2 seasons. He goes in and becomes a head coach. That's also why you're starting to see the staff improvement, because Tom Allen's not wanting to hold guys back. He doesn't want to hide. He would love to have those guys on staff, Kane Womack and Kalen DeBoer. He'd love to have those guys on staff 4 or 5 years. But he's also helping them elevate and say, you know what, you want to be in the NFL, you want to be a college football head coach, let me help you get to that next level. And that's why you're also starting to see players want to come play for him, and coaches want to start work for him, because he doesn't just care about the wins and losses at Indiana. He's also caring about these people, players, and his staff on a personal level. And that's what resonates. And that's why you're starting to see this success. And, I go back to, you look back at Tom Allen's first year, having Kevin Wilson, the way everything ended, there could have been a ton of transfers. The program could have gone back to being 3-9 and 4-8 and 2-10. And nobody, I don't think, would have batted an eye. And, Tom Allen was like, to hell with that. We want to win, and we want to win now. His very first message was that breakthrough. He wanted to win big his very first season. He had some bumps along the way. He's persevered. He was willing to look at himself in the mirror and say, what do I need to change? And what have we seen? An 8-5 season and a 6-2 season. So, it's just so personal at Indiana. This was a big recruiting weekend for them, but it's so much deeper than recruiting. It's everything from the coaching staff to getting the fans to buy in, to the recruiting, to the success on the field. It's just, I can't talk about Tom Allen enough. I do think he's one of the best coaches in college football right now. And hopefully that translates again this year, because Indiana needs to have another successful season to keep that momentum rolling.
You brought up a great point. After Kevin Wilson, but it had the open transfer rule been around then, I think it would have decimated the Indiana football program. And I mean, completely destroyed it, because every good player would have left. And because I don't think they would have stuck around. I just don't. Now, that didn't happen, so that's great. And they have gotten to see that, wow, look what I stuck for. Am I so glad I stuck around? Well, most of those guys are gone, or all of them are gone. But they knew probably pretty quickly that it's worth sticking around for.
Well, the only argument I would make to that is, you might,
except for the defensive guys wouldn't have left. I think they loved Tom Allen then.
Well, I was going to bring up Mike Woodson as an example. Look at how many players from Indiana basketball hit the transfer portal when Archie Miller, and then, all but 1 or 2 of them are sticking around. They decided to stay. So you might have had that kind of effect with Tom Allen. You don't know. I agree with you. I think it would have hurt the program, because you're going to have some guys that are just like, I came here to play for Kevin Wilson. I'm good enough to play at Oklahoma. I'm good enough to play at Penn State, or, whatever. And they would have been gone. But it would have been interesting to see how many of those guys got to stuck around. I think you're right. I think the defensive players, having known him, having played for him, would have been more willing to stick around. But it would have been interesting. Fortunately, Indiana didn't have to deal with that, and the rest is history. And now he's got one of the up-and-coming programs in the Big Ten.
Absolutely. I know you got to get going, so thanks a lot for joining us. Kevin Brockway is going to join us next. We'll talk about Indiana's announced 100% capacity. We'll talk about what we think that they're going to do, what the fans are going to do now. What will the football fans do for Indiana? What do you have coming up, Dustin, before we talk to you again on Thursday?
Yeah, we're working on our better or worse. We're going to look at every Big Ten team, better or worse offense, better or worse defense, a breakdown basically of the running game, passing game, kicking game, and just kind of get ready for the 2021 season.
Am I in there anywhere?
Yeah, we'll work you in there. What do you
the worst? I'm in the worst.
Receiver, running back, whatever you want to play.
I was a DB wide receiver, man. And tight end.
We'll put you on the list there at somewhere in the mix and get you a mention.
Brother, you have a great day. We appreciate you.
Thanks. You too, guys.
Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition stopping by to join us talking about Indiana football. We got more. Kevin Brockway from CNHI is going to stop by next after this break. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether you're looking for...
Hello, Kevin Brockway.
What's going on?
What are you doing today?
I got stuff to do, work to do, yeah.
I was going to say, if you want to come get me, we can go downtown to Yogi's.
Yeah, maybe later. We'll see. Yeah, today's kind of a tricky day, but we can definitely do it at some point this week.
Man, those games last night were something.
Yeah. They were. The game Saturday night was kind of depressing, but it was a great game.
Which one?
The Nets and the Bucks. It went into overtime.
I can't believe they lost that. I thought the next.
Well, Durant was out of gas. He was just tired. Nobody else stepped up. Joe Harris had like a wide open 3 in overtime that he missed.
Did you see where Joel Embiid and Doc Rivers just ripping on Simmons?
Yeah.
He was a fraud. He came from LSU or he got paid. It's just a joke.
Well, he can't shoot.
He's a guard. He can't hit free throw.
Can't shoot. Can't hit free throws. I mean,
now Trae Young couldn't hit last night.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's pressure. Game 7 in that point.
Dude, the defense was immense.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fouls that don't get called.
Yeah, that was good for Nate McMillan, though.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's going to be something funny to talk about with
not a good look for
Chris Denari this week.
Yeah.
Dum diddy. Did you didn't go up to the top 100?
No.
How come?
I just didn't. I went to Indy All-Stars the week before, but I don't have any interest in people that aren't, unless they're seniors and are going somewhere. I mean, that's not like thing.
The coaches were there, right?
Were they were allowed to be there? I thought that.
Yeah, you didn't know that? No, Woodson was there. Fife was there.
Yeah, I guess the recruiting windows
are open now
this year. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's open.
Yeah.
All right.
Where did they hold it?
Oh, sorry, y'all.
Damn it, where was that?
Yeah, Mike Roberts did an interview on AJ Guyton's podcast. I don't know if you saw that.
No.
All right, I'm resend.
Front-wheel drive lease for just $180 a month, or a new 2021 Honda Accord LX front-wheel drive lease for just $270 a month. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back. Kevin Brockway from CNHI Papers is with us. Kevin, did you see Cal Schwarber go off over the weekend?
Yeah, that was
a major league record.
That was quite the series for him against my Mets. But he was feasting on high fastballs that whole series, and he was just knocking them out of the park. I mean, he was.
Well, why do you keep throwing to a guy who is known for just crushing balls?
Yeah, no,
and they kept throwing it at him. I'm like, are you stupid?
It was we would call it. It was I don't know. It's funny because Mets pitchers are very stubborn that way. They think they can get and they have great pitching. They've had great pitching all the season. That's why they're in first place. But I think they just kind of think we're going to throw at anyone. We're not going to back away from anyone. We're not going to pitch around people. But it turned out to be their undoing in that series. That ballpark I think is good for him because that ball really, especially in the summer. Remember in the Nats Park, I mean that ball really takes off there. Now, of course, he played a lot of his career at Wrigley, but Wrigley is one of those parks. When the wind is blowing out, it can the ball can really travel. But when the wind is blowing in, it's really hard. So he's getting a chance to play every day too, and he's making the most of it. I mean, he's really on a nice string, kind of turning the Nationals around a little bit.
Yeah, and then the NBA playoffs have just been fun to watch. How about Atlanta? I mean, that is just going to be. I mean, what else you got to say? Nate McMillan gets fired by the Pacers. They fire the guy that replaced him. Now he is a series away from going to the NBA Finals. He's in the conference finals, a place the Pacers haven't been for quite some time. So that's an embarrassing look. And
it's really interesting to me. Like sometimes these awards, you got to wonder. It's like Coach of the Year. It went to Tom Thibodeau of the Knicks, right? But if you really think about it, and it's interesting that they don't factor in the postseason to these awards because Nate McMillan, you look at Monty Williams and what he's done with the Suns. I mean, those are two guys I think are more deserving than Thibodeau based on what they did. I mean, Nate McMillan came into an interim situation in the middle of the year and completely turned that thing around and got the most out of Trae Young, and Trae Young is playing great. And they're legit. But I'll tell you what, Milwaukee, being a Nets fan and, watching what happened on Saturday night and that heartbreaking defeat. But Giannis looks like he's on a mission. Chris Middleton is playing really well for the Bucks. And I think that'll be a whale of a series, but I do think that Milwaukee probably has more answers than the Sixers do. And I think Milwaukee will find a way to get to the NBA Finals. I just think it's kind of Giannis's time, and they've got a lot of really good pieces around him in Middleton, and Drew Holiday stepped up and made some big shots in that down the stretch in that game as well. Brooke Lopez played really well. So that I think it might be Milwaukee's time.
The Olympics, man, or trials are all going on. How about the number of Hoosiers that are going to the Olympics already? It's just amazing to me. Of course, the swimmers, but just the total. It's really, Indiana is not a big state. I mean, what do you got? Four. I forget what the population is. 4 or 5 million.
7. Yeah, I think it's 7 million.
7 million now.
Yeah,
but it's they're sending. I think a large number of participants to the Olympics in comparison.
They are, and listen, some of it's international with swimming. Don't forget too, it's different countries, but it's impressive. And you got Lily King there with her chance to win more gold medals as well, the former Hoosier. So it's a good crop for sure.
There's I think even some high schoolers that are trying. Football, someone put this up earlier, asked this question earlier. I wanted to keep it up. They announced 100% capacity for IU football. Do you expect IU football tickets to sell out? No, I don't expect them to sell out. I expect them to sell out some games. They're not going to sell out season tickets. No way. Indiana football fans, football still does not really move the needle, if you know what I'm saying. If we did a segment on basketball, just a general segment, and a general segment on football, I promise you, the basketball is going to blow football out of the water. And that carries over to fan spending. They are going to go to games. I think there's going to be a lot more walk-up tickets. There's going to be more season tickets sold. I think you've already done a piece on that, Kevin. I think they're running at about 10% ahead or so. They say that they're ahead, but that's 10% ahead of not much is not much. So that leaves a lot of walk-ups, but it also leaves a lot of fans for Cincinnati, for Ohio State to fill those in, because that's when Indiana sells out. It's usually an Ohio State or a Michigan game where the other team has filled in those blanks. So hopefully that is less likely to happen this year. But no, I don't think they're going to season tickets sell out. No, if that's what you're asking.
What's interesting, they're doing these 3-ticket plans, which I think is Ohio State, Rutgers, and maybe Michigan State, I think it is. And I think part of the reason why they're doing that is, to prevent more Ohio State walk-ups. And, you don't have to commit to a full season ticket, but you can do these 3 games. So, trying to get more crimson and cream in the, and less scarlet and gray in the stands for that Ohio State game, which could turn out to be a huge game, depending on how, the season goes at that point in the year. But
it's going to be a huge game regardless.
All hope, Eric. Well, you never know. I mean, what if Indiana loses to Iowa and Cincinnati? Isn't it as huge?
Well, yes. I mean, it's still going to be a huge game, but it could have bigger implications.
Yeah, it just depends on how things go. It's kind of a little later in the season, so you got to see how things play out. But it certainly has the potential to be. Another interesting thing of the follow up to that season tickets. Most of the people, some of the people I'm talking to about that are saying that their seats really aren't displaced once. As a matter of fact, one person said, "Hey, we ended up getting better seats." So it really wasn't that big of a deal about people were complaining about the whole ticket thing, but they did keep them in their general sections. So it turned out to be kind of a non-issue.
And the thing is, basically, this is something that was actually already in place. They just weren't doing it because it didn't really matter. Now it's starting to matter because people are going to start purchasing more seats. And so that's why they're doing that. Hopefully that's the case, because if you can maintain a positive program winning, you're going to sell more, hopefully. And a lot of schools, well, what they used to do, I think they used to force you to buy football tickets to buy basketball tickets. There's some of that, but luckily that's not going on anymore.
Well,
but
I will be fascinated to see with the dynamic of this season, like what kind of fan support they do get, because it'll be interesting because you got a winning product on the field, you got a product that Tom Allen and his staff have built over 2 years. And I saw it the other way when I was in Florida, where it was a football school, 90,000 people. Billy Donovan won 2 national championships, but did lose a lot of those players to the NBA. And the following season, they had a bad season, and the arena was half full. And, they used to do Midnight Madness at Florida, and they discontinued it because in 2008, 12,000-seat arena, you only had 3,000 people. Kentucky, 24,000-seat arena, it was full for Midnight Madness. So it was a bad look for Florida. So they stopped doing Midnight Madness because of it, because it was a bad look for recruiting. But that's
say that again now.
When you're the second program, in terms of tradition, that's always fascinating to me. Listen, I think Tom Allen's put a program that's deserving of support. It's a 50,000-seat stadium. It's not like it's a 90 or 100,000 feet stadium. That stadium should be filled for every game.
It's just. There's never been football support, but there's never been consistent winning. In the Bill Mallory era, you had competitive, fun. You beat Ohio State a couple times, which hadn't happened. Ohio State was down then, but then it's back to Indiana football again for all those years. So there just never has been that support there. Period, unfortunately, because basketball was so big as well. But yeah, they have to have it. I mean, you cannot build a program without support. You've got to have the players and all of that, but you have to have the support, because trust me, this year is going to be extraordinarily much more difficult for Indiana when they go to play at Iowa with a full stadium. That's going to be much, much different than it was last year.
You're going at the big house. Yeah, they're going to be at Michigan. You go
to Michigan and Penn State. So Indiana has to go to Iowa, Michigan, and Penn State. And let me tell you, after an empty year, those 3 stadiums will be packed to the gills. Now, Indiana can play. They should have beaten Penn State 2 years ago at Penn State with a full house. You got to go on the road and do this, though. They can win all 3 of those games. I think the Penn State game is going to be the toughest of those 3. But we'll see. It's going to be a tough year for Indiana. I'm bullish on them, but man, they got a tough road schedule. Those are 3 tough games, especially when you talk about opening at Iowa. I don't understand why that happened. Why are they opening again with a conference game on the road? It's just, I don't get it. That hardly ever happens. It happened a couple of years ago. And I don't understand the scheduling of what is the reason for that. It would be a good question to ask someone.
if you remember last year, they were supposed to open at Wisconsin, and that was supposed to be a Friday night game. So the Big Ten schedule has not come out yet, but it would not surprise me if they make that maybe a Thursday or Friday, like a showcase kind of game. Because, it's probably going to be a preseason top 25 matchup. I mean, you're talking about two teams that are probably going to be in the top 25 in the preseason.
I think it's going to be a top 15 matchup.
It'll be a big game. It will be a big game. And don't forget, you got Cincinnati and Ohio State at home too. Yeah,
I know if Indiana wins at Iowa, the Cincinnati game is going to be a top 10 matchup.
Yeah. So it's no picnic, no walk in the park, and then you get to go to beautiful Western Kentucky and Bowling Green, Kentucky. I've never been to Bowling Green. Is there anything that you can tell me about it, or have you ever been there?
Many times. I can tell you all you need to know. There's a nice little small stadium. It's where Jeff Brom coached there. Bobby Petrino coached there. It's just it should be a nice little win for Indiana. The fact that they have to go on the road to a place like that is funny because it's the payback. It's probably a 2-1 kind of a deal. I think they've done that before. Indiana has played at Western before. They've got a relationship there. They played down there. It's probably been 5 years ago. I'd have to look it up, but they played down there 5 or 6 seasons ago in a close game. I think they won like 39-36. It may have been in the Kevin Wilson era, maybe the last year of the Kevin Wilson era. I think Jeff Brom may have been the coach then, maybe.
Good place to eat there or anything like that, or any favorite?
Just your normal
Steamer Seafood.
There you go, John, the producer. What Steamer Seafood?
WKU. That's why I felt the need to butt in. So yeah, Steamer Seafood. Go there.
Well, there you go, Mr. WKU. They have a communications program there.
And you also got the hot rods and the Corvette Museum and stuff.
Can you trust seafood in
the
Kentucky?
Corvette Museum?
I remember
the Corvette Museum that sunk into the ground.
Yes,
I remember. I remember one time I had shrimp scampi in Lexington, and I had really bad food poisoning on the flight back. I mean, I had like a brown bag. I was covering a Florida Kentucky game, so I don't know if I trust seafood.
Is Lexington known for seafood?
I forget the name of the restaurant, but somebody referred it to me, and it was
it was Lexington. What do you expect?
Yeah.
Now, Louisville used to have great stuff because they used to have a place that Clearwater Fine Foods that would just fly in, fly out because they have a UPS hub. The UPS hub is in Louisville.
Yeah,
so they would fly everything, fly in, fly out. Well, that place closed, man. I was so disappointed. It was horrible.
I remember all the Wick's Pizza is my favorite place in Louisville, Bardstown Road. That's amazing.
But back to this. Indiana, starting at Iowa. Well, first of all, we just got done talking to Dustin about the new commitments. Tywone Mullen's brother,
Travell,
and Travell Mullen, another a 4-star, another great commitment for Indiana. He could have gone. Just like I told Dustin, he could have gone somewhere else to do his own thing, but Indiana was home to him.
You got Travell Mullen, and then you're going to have the McCullough kids all coming, and it's going to be interesting. Some family ties that are going to help continue with the talent level here. But I do like the direction they're going in recruiting, and that's why I think like NIL is going to be fascinating. And now you're talking about the latest is that conferences are going to come up with rules that are going to come up to effect on July 1st. So I think you will see a leveling of the playing field there in terms of, not having to worry about some states having NIL laws or, and some schools not. I think every school is going to have them now. It looks like by July 1st, the NCAA is mandating it. So, Indiana will still be able to recruit all across the country.
But just because you're mandating it, how do you make it into effect that fast? The states have to do this.
The schools are going to do it. They're going to give the schools the latitude to do it. So, Indiana has that program in place. So does Purdue. They all have NIL programs. They all have marketing programs in place.
But see, here's the thing. There's no there's no governing them. Who's governing them? Who is regulating them? If Alabama says, "Hey, you can take it as much as $1 million a year," and I mean.
No, the conferences are regulating it. Basically, that's the direction they're going now. This
you mean the SEC?
SEC, ACC, the power conferences. So every conference is going to have their own.
The SEC regulates LSU and all those. I mean, come on. The SEC is the. Let's just be honest. Cheatingest football conference in college football. And
I mean, listen, it's but I mean, it's going to be above board now. Every conference is going to have their own rules, so it's going to be. Every
so now all these Lexuses and Land Rovers these dudes are driving us, they can just be, man, this is going to be the Wild West.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's still going to be a little messy, but I think that they're trying to, work around it. But listen, there's still going to be, there'll still be things on the shenanigans under the table that are going to be going on. And if that's the case, and it's up to the NCAA to regulate that. But as we have seen, not only are they slow, inept in regulating that, they're slow in enforcing. I mean, look at the FBI probe 2017, we're in 2021, and no schools have received any significant penalties from that yet. So,
well, the funny thing is, Mark Emmert coming out saying, I am telling the schools either you do it or I'm going to do it. Well, he's the one that's been holding it up, but I'm assuming actually it's the schools that's been holding this up. He's just the mouthpiece, and they have just been fighting it. Where Mark Emmert gets all the grief from people like me, it's actually the schools. It's the NCAA Board of Governors. It's basically that aspect of it. And there's concern about the smaller schools in the non-Power 5, and it's listen, hey, it's always been a tough road for the Group of 5. Let's put it that way. But they've always found a way to adapt and to come through. And there's always great stories from the non-Group of 5 that, teams with the 2 stars and the 3 stars. It's not always about recruiting to at least be competitive. And we've seen that there's something to be said for development. And you see schools like Cincinnati, UCF. These schools pop up every year and are able to compete and play in major bowls. Yeah, and we've got to take a break, but man, it's been fun. Look forward to having you back on tomorrow. Thanks for coming on to talk about that. Charlie's out today; he's traveling, so just patching in. But man, it was a fun weekend. You're unfortunately your Nets go down though. Your Mets are still in first place, right?
Yeah, but that could be fading fast after Kyle Schwarber, like you said, and I ran through him over the weekend. They got the Bravos this week, and it'll be an interesting summer. We'll see if they can sustain it.
All right, brother. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. Kevin Brockway, CNHI Sports. Thank you, sir.
All right, see you tomorrow.
Yes, sir. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're
Hey, so what is that you were saying? You need a sports lawyer?
Tomorrow, I've already got one. Alex
good.
Robbins.
Oh, Alex Robbins. He's the brother of Kyle Robbins, the guy who used to do Crimson Quarry.
They're not brothers.
Are they related? Are they cousins?
I do not think that they are.
Because I know Kyle Robbins is also a lawyer. That's why I was curious if they were related.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, that is weird.
I'm getting his email right now for you. We'll get him on at 10:20, and he can do from 10:20 to 10:40.
For today or tomorrow?
You may be offline. Reload. That's weird.
You're not offline. You're fine.
What the hell? That's something different. Is that this? The fuck was that? All right, I'll be ready. Cool.
So tomorrow or today? Because you said 10.
Tomorrow.
Make sure.
Tomorrow.
Gotcha.
Tomorrow.
Good. And if
it would have been great if it was today, because now I got 1 hour to do with one guy.
And if he doesn't join before we come back, I'll shoot him a message, make sure he's able to
Copy
still join.
Email address.
to switch us back over to the Andy Moore logo. Okay, cool.
Add that in here. Paste. Save.
You go ahead and shoot Jim Reamer a text, make sure he's good to go.
Share. To you. Right.
Okay, I'm going to bring us back.
Long list of craft beers and all of the right foods to go with. Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink. This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back on this Monday. Hope everyone had a great weekend. You know, I was thinking the college basketball, the face of college basketball is going to look different next year. You're not going to have Roy Williams. Mike Krzyzewski's last season is going on. What are some of the other faces that are changing? Well, you're going to have name, image, likeness. Tomorrow, Attorney Alec Robbins will join us. We're going to talk about that because that is quickly slamming down upon us. Hey, Jim, how are you, brother?
Doing okay. Hopefully, can you hear me?
Talking about name, image, likeness. Alec Robbins will join us tomorrow to talk more about that, an attorney. But that is quickly coming down upon people, and now you've got Mark Emmert saying, "Oh, I'm mandating that the schools do this now." And Kevin Brockway was just with us. Some schools like Indiana, Purdue already have programs in place where they've set up where they're working with certain companies, but I just don't know how this is going to be regulated, man, and not become just the wild, wild west.
That's the thing I've written a lot about it on the boards on the IU on your website. And the one thing that I think is definitely going to happen is it'll become sort of a contrived market where it'll be used more as an inducement for kids. And some people are saying that happens anyway, and that's fine. I know there's obviously schools that break rules, but you're never going to legislate again. You're never going to be able to legislate against people who are willing to cheat. So, and that's even a side note on the overall issue of, you're going to be able to tell a kid, look, if you come to whatever school, say Indiana, Indiana with a very robust fan base, you come to IU, we'll be able to guarantee you 10,000 jersey sales a year, a season or whatever the terms may be. And it just becomes sort of a de facto quid pro quo, which is what, the FBI just went after at the coaching level. They didn't seem to be too interested in the recruiting side of it, mostly just those involved in that Ponzi scheme and the layer just below it. But now you're going to have these situations where, they are going to use this opportunity to, or some of them, maybe not all of them, but will use this opportunity to just create false markets. And I'm a big believer that the name across the chest is absolutely what's more important at the college level than the name on the back. Obviously, in our use case, there's no names on the back, but people know what I mean when I say that. Mm-hmm. You've got situations where, with the G League now accepting players, you've got this overtime league that might be carving some kids off the top. You're going to have guys. Very few players would command any type of significant endorsement deals at the college level. Those guys are few and far between. You look at the number of players that actually have their own shoe at the NBA level. That's not that many. And it's you look at a guy like Zion Williamson, obviously would have commanded some stuff. I'm not sure if R.J. Barrett would have commanded a lot of endorsements at the college level playing for Duke. So few of these kids have that kind of demand, have that kind of draw. But when you start carving off the top players in each class, the guys that are presumably the most anticipated guys that will go to the NBA, now you're talking about the next layer of guys who don't necessarily come to high major school. I mean, Duke, Indiana, Michigan, Purdue, all the big schools are going to still compete for the top players that are willing to come to college, right? But now you're going to be scraping off the top layer. And you're going to be having a second tier kid now come to college that isn't going to have the name recognition coming out of high school that some of these guys would, Let's say if Trace Jackson Davis would have bypassed college altogether and gone to, say, the G League or however, whatever his chosen path would be. I mean, IU would still probably get one of the better players out of the state, better bigs out of the state of Indiana, but it would also be, or out of the Midwest, but it wouldn't be a kid that was covered nearly as much as what Trace Jackson Davis was. So he wouldn't have the draw. And now you're giving these guys opportunities to make money on the side based on what? If it's based on some level of control, which people I know are fighting the NCAA about, they think the NCAA tries to control everything. And some of their rules are just downright silly. But I just think it's going to create a situation where it's sort of a false marketplace. And I don't know, like you said, it will be a wild, wild west. And I don't know what the answer is just yet. I sort of have an answer, but it's a hell of a lot longer than the answer I just gave. And it involves a lot of math. So,
well, I'm wondering, for basketball more so than football, because there's obviously less numbers, but you can just have a car dealer in town and that would provide 12 cars, 13 cars to the recruits. Of course, now those last 5 guys are not worthy of that.
Right.
But does some school that's just big enough, that has a big enough donor, that has a big enough whatever, set that up? I mean, it's crazy, but that is completely within the realm of legality after this goes into effect.
Yeah, there's got to be a way to manage it to where it's based on I don't know how to explain it.
Well, the NCAA, they fought it so long until it was forced down their throat, and now they're going to have to come up with something like that, to where instead of the time that they had fighting it, instead of putting something together to be prepared, now they're not prepared, and it's just going to slap them in the face. And I'm worried. I'm just concerned of what it's going to do to college athletics.
Well, look at the NBA, for example. This is maybe where I'm going with some of this. You talk about school. You talk about these guys who are free agents who supposedly choose bigger markets so they can they can get endorsements and be able to cash in a little bit more in their name. And there's still very few of those guys that make a major dent into their income and maybe have a major bulge in their income, because a lot of these guys, even in the NBA where the star power is huge, there's not a lot of commercial success with some of these guys. Obviously LeBron, obviously Chris Paul has found himself a niche, but you don't really see Kevin Durant making a major play on the market. I'm not even sure you see Kyrie Irving making a major play outside of his shoe. And obviously KD has his own shoe as well. But Anthony Davis, for example, saying he should go to LA so he can attract endorsements and make extra money by being in a big market or by being in LA. I'm not sure it's benefited him one bit from that angle, but that's because that's supply and demand, actual supply and demand on the business side, the way, the way that capitalism is supposed to work. How it's going to work at the college level is exactly what you said. You're going to have boosters who step up, and they're going to be providing, ways to benefit these kids that have nothing to do with what they actually provide to the university, which is, I would say, very little in terms of commerciality, because I don't think fewer people are going to go to IU games if they don't have a Trace Jackson Davis. As long as IU is still carving up scraping up their fair share of the top level talent that is willing to come to college, because that's what's going to happen here going forward. Is you're going to see more kids bypass college, and it's just going to lower. It's going to lower the overall talent base that comes to college, but it's also going to push some of those guys to stay longer because they're not going to be alleged or ready-made NBA guys.
Yeah, and I'm concerned about people like the movie Blue Chips. Happy, that booster, Happy, right. The guy that was that just was he was just bound and determined to be the benefactor of the program. Not for Indiana per se, but
right.
Whatever schools. Those guys are out there. They've got more money than sense, and they want to feel like they're the ones that control everything. Those are the guys that I worry about.
Well, the control aspect of it gets lost because it'll be legal. To some extent, it'll be. I'm assuming, you assume that with this type of leeway now that a vast majority of this will be. I mean, I'm speaking from the angle that everything that I'm suggesting will happen will be legal within the rules. And it really becomes an arms race. And you may see kids opt to go to a smaller school because they'll get a better deal. They'll get, Indiana State might be able to snag a kid that's maybe a definite high major because they're willing to make him their priority versus maybe say Indiana or Purdue or Butler's third best recruit. Indiana State might be able to find, you'll have a huge, I don't know who the huge the huge Indiana State booster might be, but I'm sure they've got someone with deep pockets that would be willing to produce that type of situation if it meant a top level kid could go there and then help them win a lot of games. So, yeah, I'm not even suggesting any violations. I'm just thinking that's your term. The Wild Wild West is extremely valid because I think that's what it's going to become, and until and unless they get a handle on how to actually do it.
Well, I'm not sure if this happened, but I guess it did because the Supreme Court seems to have come out with a ruling against the NCAA
today
in the Alston case. The NCAA versus Alston.
Oh, here we go. It just came across Twitter. Wow.
Yeah, this is just happening right now. So speak of the devil. Supervision of how just a lot to read through while we're live on the air. So,
right.
But this stuff's going on right now as we speak. And a unanimous ruling, the United States Supreme Court rules against the NCAA in the Alston case. This is not the end of amateurism, but it chips away at the core aspects of it and sets precedent that the NCAA is not special and is subject to normal applications, federal antitrust laws. So basically saying you can't stop people from making money, I guess, in the antitrust part of it.
I guess I'd like to read more. I didn't know about that case individually.
Well, I didn't either, and I didn't know that it was coming up for a decision.
Right.
But it is out now, and so yeah. So that's what to read more into that to see what all that does. But tomorrow I'm going to have on. Go ahead.
I was going to say there's no reason why this wouldn't trickle down the high school level either, because the IHSAA has similar rules dealing with what kids can and can't get in terms of. I would use the word rewards versus compensation, but there's no reason it wouldn't take much for it to slip into a compensation discussion. I mean, what would keep somebody from providing, some form of asset or some form of compensation to secure a kid coming to their school? What would keep the IHSAA from being dealt any differently? And this would be any state high school association, not just Indiana. But what would keep a state high school association from being treated any differently in a court of law than what the NCAA was? And at the high school level, they have an even bigger hold in terms of monopoly, because at least the NCAA, you have kids at that level can skip college. They can go to NAI school. They can go the junior college route. I mean, those aren't hugely viable options, but they definitely are options. And now they can go straight to any number of professional leagues because these guys have gotten to be so good coming out of high school that they are going to have more options than just attending college. I don't buy the notion. Obviously courts can disagree, and I can just be a minority. I don't buy the notion that the NCAA has monopoly on post high school graduate, basketball beyond high school level. So I would start there. I don't know what the NCAA, the basis of their arguments are, other than just the pure definition of amateurism, which we're well beyond that. If they're clinging to that, I think they're clinging to kind of a fool's argument. So, but I just don't believe they're a monopoly on basketball at that level. I think there's a lot of other options for these guys to play in. And I would encourage those who think the NCAA is oppressive to put their money where their mouth is and go a different direction and forego scholarship, forego a free college education, forego all the benefits that come with playing at a big time program like Indiana or Duke or Purdue or North Carolina, however fall down that list you go. There's a lot of immeasurable benefits that come from being a college athlete. And especially in football, especially in basketball, especially in women's basketball, that are just so intangible. You could never buy the amount of publicity and the number of the quality of the network that you get by being parts of those programs.
And the schools probably don't want to get into a situation to where the athletes are actually having to purchase the scholarships, because then that's seen as income that they have to pay taxes. Well, may or may not have to pay taxes on.
There's a lot of unintended ramifications that'll come from this. That's you just cited that. I mean, you start putting these kids responsible financially for their own, for the next 4 years of life. None of these guys, I don't know that I was a pretty smart kid, I thought, and I don't know that I was prepared financially or prepared intellectually to handle all the finances that I had to go through when I entered college. I had to have help from my grandfather, especially. I had to have help making sure I handled things the right way, and I don't think I don't know that all these kids have that type of help in their family. Of course, they'll rely on handlers who, want to get something off of them, perhaps, down the road, But that's a big deal. You go to a college, you get a scholarship, you basically are walked through the entire process by somebody on campus. And, those are, again, another benefit provided these athletes is they get sort of an escort into being financially responsible as an adult. I don't know how else you get that without having somebody sort of lead you through it, because it's definitely not taught in high school.
Yeah, Michael B. Jordan versus the United States. Who was that? I don't know what that one's about. Just looking on some other things on there. But, yeah, so that's – and all that is coming now. We were saying this. Today's date is the 21st? So you've got 9-10 days before this goes into effect, and to the states that already have it, the 6 states that have approved it already. And then I guess it's just up to the rest of the schools to catch up before football season, before the season starts. These students, they got to get agents now. I mean, it's so much.
When these laws came out, especially the Florida one, I read a lot about that one, and it's been a year since I've read it, so maybe some things have changed, some language has changed, but there didn't seem to be any penalty attached to violation of those laws. And obviously the NCAA can fight it, and the schools can fight it if they choose to. I mean, they can, but there didn't seem to be, I don't know what the penalty was for hindering a kid from doing that, from benefiting from his name, likeness, or image. I didn't read at the time that there were any penalties involved or that they were even discussed, and I'm talking about the actual legislation. So I don't know where it goes from there. I'd like to read more on that Austin case to see what the language was from the Supreme Court, or even what the arguments were that were being appealed. So
it's funny where we are today, and I can think back to when Steve Alford was not allowed to play against Kentucky because he posed for a charity calendar for a sorority. how ridiculous that was. And that
Right.
shows how ridiculous the NCAA has been, though, and how that's exactly why we are where we are today. That is how ridiculous they were and stayed for such a long time without change, with just resisting change. And I'm not saying that you have to change for change's sake, but you have to be aware of your surroundings, and they have just thought that they were protected, and they're not. And man, it's going to, I don't know what it's going to do to the NCAA, to be honest with you.
Well, a lot of times adults and administrators make decisions, executives, people who, that have authority / responsibility make decisions based on the notion of, slippery slope. If I let you do this, then somebody else is going to come in and possibly abuse it. And that's what happened in the Alford case. It's like his actions were well-intentioned. What was going on was well-intentioned, but then all it takes is for somebody to say, well, you're allowed to do this, then we can do that. And then that becomes a problem. We did a deal in the mid 2000s where we had a couple of open gyms at a time when the NCAA language was pretty vague in the fall as to what college coaches could go to observe kids, to watch and evaluate players. And so we had a couple of open gyms at Carmel. And the first one was outstanding and really had way more to do with school coaches and college coaches and these kids just playing. Didn't charge anybody anything to get in, didn't charge anybody to participate. It was a fantastic afternoon. It's where I met Tom Crean. It's where Tom Crean met a kid that he recruited, Dominic James, that eventually went to Marquette. And it's where a lot of these guys, it's where Armand Bassett got introduced to Indiana University back at that time. That's a class of kids that I was heavily involved in. I coached that age group. But we had probably 38 kids playing, and I think we had an upwards of 25, 26 schools represented, most of which were Division I schools. Well, then some idiot down in Arkansas decided to do kind of the same thing, except he charged the players $40 to get in. He charged the coaches money to get in. He charged parents money to get in. And then the NCAA came out a week later with some special addendum and shut all that stuff down. So all it took was one guy to screw things up and one guy to completely abuse a rule or in this case, maybe a loophole in a rule to really cause the NCAA to tighten things down. And I sometimes, the NCAA will do that versus figuring out a more intelligent way to write a rule. And that's, again, that goes back to what you said. It is, it puts them in a position of being pretty stagnant and pretty stale. So
we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about your thoughts on the Orme kid at Carmel, but also the top 100 was this weekend.
Yep.
Alec Lasley, I think, will join us later, but we got to take a break. More to talk about. Back after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether you're
Did you make it up there, Jim?
You did that to yourself, huh?
I did, man. I never have done that before.
Not just Charlie and me. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was there the whole day. So, well, I was there for the games. The station work at the beginning is hit and miss on its validity to the process, but it was good talking to coaches, that's for sure. I mean, Indiana was there, Fife was there with Woodson. It was good to see. And basically,
I think
it was
Painter was there. I think Bruce Weber.
Yep.
No, I think that's all I can think of. Some assistants.
Jim, does Alec need the link, or is this you referring to a different day for Alec?
Alec Lasley?
Yeah.
I asked him if he wants to come on at 10:40, but
might as well tell him like 10:45 now, or
well,
because you went long a second ago. If you want to keep it close to even.
Well, he hasn't responded yet either, anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Well, if he does, let me know.
Someone said that. So this whole video goes on YouTube, even this behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, this does. So this part I mute for radio.
Okay, but it's still
everything that. Yeah. So I just mute your all's mics, and then when I bring us back in, technically you're all still unmuted, but it's a good practice to keep you all from just to get back into being quiet before we start again.
That's why they watch you. They like the behind the scenes.
Yeah, YouTube people like seeing. They got to see our near meltdown with Dick Vitale last Tuesday because we had trouble getting him connected.
Oh, really?
Oh my God, that would have been horrible. Because that was.
I didn't realize. I didn't realize you were getting him. That'd have been fun. I mean, he obviously wears thin to a certain degree after all these.
He was
years,
awesome that day, man.
He was, and he was very patient. Thankfully,
he kept staying. He kept saying, "Well, I got to go," and he'd talk about something else.
Yeah. He's got. I mean, shoot.
That's the second time I've had him on.
Oh, really? Good. Cool.
First time on YouTube though.
Oh, it's true. That's true. No camera though.
Yeah, so he didn't want his camera. That was the whole deal with why we had issues.
Well, I didn't have all. He's got to have all the makeup, you know.
Yeah.
We talked about that the Geico commercial.
Yeah.
What did he end up saying that
John? They had to do 3 takes.
But why he couldn't pick it up? How did they end up doing it? I don't
remember. I don't know. I
need to go back and listen to it. $270 a month. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back. I hope you are having a good Monday start to your week. Jim Reamer's here with us. I am hopefully going to have a good start to our week. The weather's better than it was. Man, how about that rain? Holy smokes. If you were in central Indiana over the weekend.
We didn't get that up here.
We got killed in Bloomington. South of Bloomington got just killed. The rain we lost power. It was the water.
It didn't even storm up here until like 1 a.m. as far as like lightning and thunder. And I really didn't look out the window to see if it was raining before that. But I went to bed about 1, and that's about the time we started getting some of the heavier stuff up here.
Oh man, yeah, we got it. Robert's been asking, curious on Reamer, your thoughts on the Orme kid there in Carmel.
Sam Orm, 6'7", really long, incoming junior, played a lot as a sophomore this past year. Really was getting JV minutes until the Bar Reeve game when he and Todd Leary's son, Will, saved Carmel's bacon that game. And we talked a little bit about that during the year, how Will came in and just started bombing, and it really helped and loosened things up. And then Orm's length with Waddell's on the Brian Waddell's going to Purdue with Waddell's length on the back of Carmel's zone press really bothered Bar Reeve and also Orm's shot making. And Orm, most people who watched Carmel play this year saw Sam as a catch and shoot guy. He is way more versatile than that. He's extremely good off the ball. And, again, Carmel's a motion team, so their kids know how to play without the basketball, which is a big deal for me. I love it. And IU fans who grew up watching Knights teams play can appreciate that type of skill set. He's probably a better version at that age of Brian Waddell, who had a great second half of his junior year coming back from an injury and had a great senior year, and of course committed late to Purdue. So I look for Sam to be at major level, even though right now his only offer is Huntington. Sam is a better talent than some of the guys that are getting offers in that class so far. And he's got a chance to be pretty good. He's got to put on strength. I mean, and his body, you look at him, it will be an issue. How will he get strength? How will he be able to maintain it? Will it impact him like injury wise? Because sometimes kids that are thin start packing on weight, and they start getting wear and tear injuries that carry through, their college career. So, but he's talented.
The Top 100 Showcase was this weekend up in Indianapolis, and looking forward to, because it was the first time the coaches could get out and watch players for 2 years now?
It's been that. Yeah, it's been that. From an AAU perspective, that was the first time I've seen some of these guys since July of 2019.
How important is that to these players?
Well, I think it's important for the borderline kids. I think there's some kids, especially, we talk about Leland Walker, but the 2022 class whose recruiting is there's a lot of schools I think that easily fall in love with him if they got a chance to watch him play a little bit when they see how his game has matured, especially the last year, to where he's just become more than just an athletic point guard. His shot has really gotten a lot better, but his handle of possessions.
I've talked about him a lot because God, that dude can shoot the ball, man. And junior, senior, but his height. I know that I don't want to be that guy, but on some teams, there are plenty of guys that are 5'10" that can kill it, no doubt. I'm just at Indiana. I don't know that with the direction they're going, if that would work, but dude can shoot the ball.
You can't be both. You can't be short, and you have to be a better shooter. The shorter you are, the better of a shooter you have to be. Now, in Leland's case, his outside shot has not been his asset until recently. Now, what has happened is his mechanics have smoothened out. He's definitely getting to the point now where he can beat people over a ball screen. You can't necessarily go underneath ball screens anymore. Now, you can pick your poison and decide you'd rather have him shooting it, getting that look versus giving him the ability to get downhill. But it's no longer a definite anymore. It used to be because he would have to stop and slow. He'd have to stop. His release was slow. His release is smoother. It's quicker. He doesn't have to stop and get set anymore. He understands how his footwork. He's just a lot cleaner getting from gather to shot than what he used to be. And his mechanics are just much more consistent than what they used to be. So, he's a guy, I think if he was, and some of it too, if you're a school at the high major level and you can get a guy that you think is athletic, who's maybe 6'2" versus 5'11", then you're going to go in that direction of the 6'2" kid. If you think it's a lot of the intangibles are the same, and I don't really know. I know Coach Miller, they were looking for a bigger option at the point out of the 2022 class. I think that there are a couple of schools this past weekend that were whispering if he was 2023, they would definitely be on top of him. And I don't know what makes the difference. It doesn't change his ceiling any. Maybe it's because of what's available in the 2022 class versus 2023. I don't know. But I've liked he's a high major in a lot of capacities. His one thing has been, his two things have been his size and his shooting. He is answering the shooting questions extremely well of late. And that's the player that you've seen recently, Jim, is not the kind of guy he was a year ago or even early into his junior year.
But that's what you want, though. You want to see a kid is
absolutely. Well, Ben, you looked at him then and you thought, well, his mechanics weren't bad. I mean, there was nobody that could look at him and think they couldn't figure out a way, see a pathway for him to be a consistent shooter. And really all you have to do is be a threat to be able to beat people who go underneath. And
is he the next Nigel Pack, the one that gets away, the good one that kind of gets away from these Indiana teams?
Well, let's see what happens. I think he's a better prospect than Nigel. I mean, Kansas State, and I mean, Nigel obviously had a good freshman year, but Kansas State didn't win. They didn't win a lot of games this year. So are you contributing? And there's sometimes where that's the case, where a freshman will, somebody will go and play a lot as a freshman because they don't have a lot going on right now. Are you a guy that's contributing to winning, or are you a guy that's getting stats because you're getting a lot of playing time? And that's not a knock on Nigel. I didn't watch Kansas State play at all this year, so I don't mean it to sound like that.
Well, they're coached by Bruce Weber, so that should tell you plenty.
Well, I like Bruce.
I'm kidding. It's a joke. That's a joke.
I got a good Bruce story. I just can't say it on the air. Probably.
He is a whiner, man. His whining about Eric Gordon just. Oh my God, I will never forget that. What a whiny ass he was.
I guess I could probably dumb it down a little bit. I've known him since he was an assistant at Purdue, so I've been friendly with him for a while. I've always appreciated his support. I could go to Illinois practices whenever I wanted, which was always nice because it's not too far of a drive. But right after EJ decommitted and then committed to Indiana, obviously, we were all out in Vegas for an event out there, and I don't know, there was a situation where I was sitting with a couple of IU assistants, one of whom used to be a former assistant of mine, and Bruce was walking in, and he looked up and he waved at me, and everybody kind of around me waved at him too, and he actually looked up and yelled and pointed at me. He's like, there's the only effing guy in Indiana that I'm willing to talk to right now. So, that was a long time ago. He's still very cordial. I'm glad he's recruiting Indiana because I think he's a good coach. I know the EJ thing was weird and kind of awkward, but as an IU fan, I was happy EJ went to Indiana. So I guess I can't be too down on it, but it was good having college coaches back, and it was good to see Weber and CeeLo, his assistant, who used to be a head coach at Southern Illinois, with him. So
there's everybody, a lot of people, especially Big Ten coaches that have gone elsewhere, they're coming back because they know the talent that's here. They know that Indiana and Purdue and Notre Dame is not going to get it all. That there's just too much. There's too many guys here. So plenty of offers. Obviously that's why Kentucky comes in. Louisville, Michigan State, Ohio State, Illinois, Iowa. There's hardly a time ever when those schools don't have an Indiana player on it. Maybe not necessarily Kentucky all the time, but the rest of those schools almost all the time have an Indiana kid on their roster.
Well, and Indiana's been in such flux that it's hard to see that. Be interesting to see if Woodson gets it really going and how that translates, especially the top tier kids. But
what was it like seeing him out there on that Saturday at that event?
I didn't see him move. He sat in the same chair the whole day. That's not a bad thing, because you could sit in one spot and pretty much see. I sat in one spot both sessions and saw every team but one in each session. So you can do that there. They do a decent job of scheduling, so you don't want to move around unless you're absolutely positively following a kid. You can be in one spot and see pretty much everything you need to see, which for me and my purposes, is always a good thing. But he was there. Coach Fife was there. Dane was much more mobile, much moving around a lot more. I think people were going to Woodson to talk to him and congratulate him on the job, and then Dane was kind of sticking with the same guys he usually hangs out with. Mike Roberts was there, and there were a couple of other guys there with IU connections, and those guys always tend to sort of gravitate toward each other and hang out at events like that. So it was good seeing them. And we're going to probably say this about a dozen more times and before 11 o'clock. It was good seeing them out because these are guys that I've gotten to know.
It's good to be out.
It's great to be out. Yeah. It felt normal finally. And it was, it was a good show, and it was good that they get a chance to finally see some guys play. And I'm looking forward to seeing them again this weekend at the Charlie Hughes shootout.
Yeah, Xavier, Tim points out, Xavier always another always pulling it, and why not? What's next? What's the event that's coming up next where these coaches will get out and watch these guys?
In Indiana, it's the Charlie Hughes Invitational. So Charlie Hughes used to be the head of Indiana AAU, but he also worked very closely with the high school association with coaches. A number of high school coaches were on the AAU board over the years. And so they started this event as sort of a scholarship event. So a lot of the proceeds went towards scholarships. I know some of the extra proceeds end up at Riley's Children's Hospital. So this is not a money-making event per se for anybody to make money. It's a money-making event for scholarship and for donation. So, but it's going to be, I think it's 106 teams will be playing this weekend at Carmel and Westfield, and that's a quarter of basically the entire state. So you're going to have a large representation of schools across the state, across all classes. And it ends up being extremely competitive when they get into bracket play. So I've not seen the schedule just in full yet, so I'm not sure who's looking to play whom yet. But it's always a great event, and there's a lot of pride and competitiveness on Sunday during bracket play because these guys know it's their jump off for what comes up this fall and in the next school season.
This then is going to probably be the biggest event for kids in Indiana this summer, I would imagine. Is this
certainly with their school teams? Yeah. I mean, there's 3 open periods in July, which is the way it used to be, which is the way.
So the Charlie Hughes is all school teams?
It is all school teams. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
because there's no school camps this like a lot of times Indiana has the camps. They're not having those team camps this year.
I don't know why. Some have, but they're not. But the Charlie Hughes is just all school teams. Basically, this is a second season for school teams across the state. This is the first look of what your school team's going to look like this year. This is an opportunity for guys to play in new roles or bigger roles, more responsibilities, because obviously kids have graduated. So, and a lot of times it's kids' first opportunities to get sort of any varsity action, and it's great that college coaches can come watch it, because it does put the recruiting into the school coaches' hands a little bit more, which is fine, because they're the ones that you have to go through them to get into the building. Basically, you have to go through them to get transcripts, or let's just say it's a heck of a lot easier than it would be to go through someone like me. I mean, if, as an AAU coach, I'm pretty active in my guys' recruiting, depending on the family. Sometimes I'm very active in their recruiting. And there's still times, though, that they absolutely have to involve the school coach, because they need to get into the building to watch workouts. They need to get transcripts. They want to talk to teachers. And that's all part of the recruiting process. And so this is good, because this is a lot of times the best way for these high school coaches, especially younger high school coaches, to meet college coaches.
Yeah, I'm just getting more and more concerned as I think about this that we're talking about and what we were talking about earlier, all that in NIL. And I'm slowly saying, hey, yeah, you talk to so-and-so my age and he handles all that. And I'm like, good Lord, I'm like, just hope that's not where it's coming. Because if that happens, that would be the end of college, that portion of college athletics, because those people are always, there's going to be enough. Like you said earlier, it just takes the one, and there's going to be more than one that screws it up if that happens to be the case. But
it'll be interesting to see if mid-majors can start snagging a kid or two that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get, because they can offer more, or they can offer priority to a kid. I remember when Indiana State switched to Under Armour, just from an apparel standpoint, and it was an easy decision. Under Armour was going to treat them a lot nicer than what Nike was. And that was, Under Armour was going to make them a priority. They were going to be able to get a bigger haul from Under Armour than they were from Nike. It was just a better deal. And, I don't know deep down these kids truly care about what apparel they're in, as long as it's free, as long as they look good, and as long as it's comfortable. And, Under Armour certainly produces all of the above. So, so priority sometimes matters. And sometimes that goes into a kid's decision anyway. The word fit is often used, but I think now you're going to hear priority used a lot. The Indiana's, this mid-major is going to make me a priority. That's going to be code for they have a booster who's willing to step up and make this worth my while.
Chris asked about earlier, we were talking about Leland Walker being 5'10". Is that right? No, but Yogi barely right at 6 foot, but not getting a lot of playing time. This could potentially, I don't know. He's not been playing. He didn't get to play during the playoffs. So,
well, with Yogi, the NBA is no different. I mean, look, it's
not like it's impossible. As I said, it's not impossible, but it's just rare. If you're, right, like you said, the shorter you are, the better you better be a shooter, man.
And you better be able to get it off. I mean, look, anybody can shoot, when you're in a gym and you look great in a workout, but how you get into a shot. Are you a threat? Can you get it over your defender's reach? How quick are you? I mean, most of us look at Yogi and think he's very athletic, but most of us who saw Yogi play, even, before, he was always the best athlete on the floor, and at Indiana, he wasn't the best athlete on the floor. And his freshman year, he played around great players and he looked good, and you thought this was going to project out. His next 2 years were kind of a struggle, in terms of shooting, decision-making, when to try to take over games, or should he try to take over games. And then his senior year, he was really good again, and I'm talking about just sometimes it's intangible things. It's issues of efficiency, and he's just not getting the opportunity at the pro level to show much. And then when he's had the opportunity early on, he just was steady at best and picked on a lot defensively. And I think a lot of his issues are all really on the defensive end of the floor, is because he's he struggles that end just with the athleticism and size of his opponent.
Okay, we got to take a quick break. We'll be back to finish it out right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans! What this week? When's so is that 3 days? Is the Charlie Hughes 3 days? 2 days?
It's full blown. It's a full blown tournament. I think it starts at 4:30 on Friday. Let me double check.
Do you have to apply for credentials?
No,
just sign in. Just to sign in.
Yeah, it should be just a sign in, I think. Yeah, it starts. Where's that? Nothing is before 4:30. So,
Westfield,
Carmel, primarily.
Oh, at Carmel High School.
Depending, Carmel. Let's see, venues: Carmel High School, Clay Middle School, Westfield High School, Westfield Intermediate School. Carmel looks like it's got. What are they using at Carmel? They're using 4 gyms at Carmel, so they're not even using the varsity gym. Well, Carmel charges like that whole like
they charge 5 gyms at Carmel.
8.
8. I'm sorry. 8.
Yeah, they charge the same price for the varsity gym as they do the field house. The field house has 4 courts.
Yeah, Floyd Central has 4, I guess.
Yeah, Westfield's got 5. I mean, they could break their varsity court in half and split it in half and go side to side, but in Carmel, you can't do that.
Yeah, they'd have to do that at Floyd to get 2 in there. It's wide enough.
I was at Salem yesterday. They've got 4 full courts.
Do they really?
Courts. Yeah, they've got a 3-court field house.
What the hell are you doing at Salem?
Watching my guy at Pekin play in a weekend tournament there.
Pekin? What guy at Pekin?
6'10" kid, Jake Cherry. He's nice.
What?
He's not. He's better than a kid that I had who went to Colgate. But I'm not sure. I mean, he won't be like a high major guy. We won't. But he's definitely, I think, Division I. He's a low major caliber kid. He's a really good defender for us.
How old
offensively, he's got to get caught up on his offense. But yeah, I went down there and watched him play. I support my guys when they're playing with their school teams a lot. I love go watch them play.
All right, you're going to have about 8 minutes-ish when we come back. So I'm going to go ahead and bring us – one more thing before I bring us in. Tomorrow, and I guess we can talk about this later, but tomorrow is another one of your days where you have a Cardinals game that we're going to have to get out at 10:30, but we can talk about that later.
That's the easiest problem we have.
Sam's Ale House in Carmel and on 86th Street in Indy have a long list of craft beers and all of the right foods to go with. Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink. This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here on this Monday. Jim Reamer with us, filling in some basketball talk from the weekend, and coming up this weekend as it continues with the Charlie Hughes Invitational up at Carmel. 106 teams. Man. So I'm guessing those are from all over, outside of Indiana.
No.
These are just Indiana teams?
Just Indiana teams, school teams.
Wow.
Yeah.
So are they in class? Is this all one tournament, or is it classed?
It's looking, hold on, look. I mean, it's kind of looking like it's broken down a little bit, but I'm not sure that they've said how it's broken down. Like you've got like Lutheran playing Jackson Dell, you've got Culver playing Greensburg, that's 3A. You've got North Harrison versus Guerin, 3A. I don't know. Cascades Lutheran versus Lutheran, that's a 1A school versus a 2A school. I don't know. Hey, let me look at their standings.
Wow. I can see the registered teams. Holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, it's anybody. I mean, it's
everybody.
Yeah, basically.
start at A with Anderson and go to Z with Zionsville, and just fill the middle. There's the Bloomington North and South, Lloyd Centrals, Center Grove, Crown Point, Crispus Attucks.
But then here's Bar Reeve playing Logansport, Plainfield, Evansville, Bosse, and Riley, South Bend Riley. So, I think what's happened is they have a breakdown probably. And then if a school like Bar Reeve wants to play bigger competition, they can. But some of these schools would rather just play teams in their own class a little bit. And a lot of it is because of the view of their own roster. Are they going to be competitive? And let me look at Cloverdale, because Rady likes to play bigger schools. He's not playing bigger schools, but he's picked Metropolitan and Lutheran, both those schools, Bloomfield, all three of those schools should be pretty good next year. Going through here, Edinburgh's got a lot of kids back. They're still playing smaller schools, although that game against 21st Century Gary will be a good one because they've got a couple of D1 games there Sunday at 1:30. And it looks like it's not bracket play this year. It looks like it's just going to be like a shootout type thing where they're just playing 4 games and then calling it a day or calling it a weekend. Let me check Carmel's schedule. Yeah, it's just 4. It looks like everybody's just playing 4 games. So it's more of a shootout type environment and not bracket
they're calling it
Sunday.
They're calling it the shootout, I noticed.
They do every it's been that name every year.
Okay.
But
I didn't know if it changed it from tournament or not.
Because they've got listed on their website, they've got pictures of teams that have won it in the past, and a lot of times you've basically thought, well, this is going to be. It's going to be one of the best teams. It's been like Cathedral, Lawrence North, Carmel, Warren Central. Obviously, those teams have all followed up by having great school seasons the next year, and of course, those are also the same schools that typically are good every year. But, but here Lawrence North plays, Gary West Saturday at 1:00, and then. That'll be a game to get to. That's at Carmel. And those who want to see the schedule, they can go to the Charlie Hughes Shootout website. You can search for the actual URL online if unless Jim has it handy. But you can also get it on the Exposure app on your phone for your Android or Apple device. So you get the Exposure app, then you go in, you pick basketball, and then just type in the search bar Charlie, and it'll show up. And it'll be this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sometimes the apps, like for my fall league, I have my own app through this system, but that costs extra money. These guys, and like a lot of others, have just decided to keep it within the generic Exposure Events app. So, but you can get it right there on your phone. You can choose to follow teams and have their schedules and results sent straight to your phone. So,
question from RBO Sprint. Did IU make a bad decision offering the Coven kid?
Look, he's talented. He's going to look great in a workout. He can shoot it, and he did shoot well at the top 100. But it's an environment where there's not obviously any defensive game planning. The game I didn't see at the beginning of his session, I think he got to the basket pretty well, which is a strength of his. I think what worries me about him. The teams, his school team he's at a 2A school. They've just been average. They were just average last year. And if a kid's that good, he's got to lift him up, and he hasn't done that yet. His AAU team, he plays for his father, who was, of course, a football player at Purdue, and went as a Broad Ripple grad, and obviously had a great career playing for a couple of teams, but obviously with New England Patriots. But they don't win a lot. They don't play a great schedule, and they don't win a ton. They win their best choice league stuff, but outside of that, they don't win a lot. And it's something you want to see more in kids. Can he be the guy that makes everybody around him better? And I'm not sure yet that he's that player now. And also, he's also been a guy that has played on teams that have been almost completely scripted around making sure he gets touches, he gets a lot of playing time, and he's the major role. So I don't know how what happens to him when he doesn't have that just completely delivered to him like it has been so far.
2 minutes left. Another comment: Booker should be priority number 1. Whoops, I took it off. Priority number 1 for IU in 2023.
I I want to see a healthy Jalen Hooks be a priority. I think he played this weekend. He was not healthy. He really played on one leg. He's coming back from a broken ankle, and he's not ready to go yet. And he was hobbled this weekend, but very, very intelligent player. He plays hard the entire time he's out there. I love his motor. I love the way he talks on defense. He's got a lot of maturity to his game that some of these other kids obviously may not have yet, and you could say they're young and not hold it against them, but it's impressive when a kid that young has that type of a mental makeup on the court, and that's the kid I'd like to see play out. I'm not sure yet that if I was a high major, I would be tossing around a lot of offers with this 2023 class just yet.
Yeah, that's a long way away, especially when you add in the transfer portal, because you don't know what you're going to have next year, much less in 2023.
It's a much deeper class than 2022. I'm just not sure it's got the star power at the top of what 2022 has. So
what do you have coming up next? Courtside Indiana. You can also find Jim there besides on at thehoosier.com.
Yeah, we obviously we podcast every week. I literally published that before I jumped on here with you. We record that every Sunday. So we did a pretty decent breakdown of the top 100. So definitely if people want to hear more about that, they can go listen to that podcast. We are starting to put more and more stuff behind paywalls coming up for this upcoming school season. And we do have a scouting service now that has gone live where a lot of the information is put up at a price that will attract college coaches, but may or may not attract a lot of families. But per NCAA rules, we're not allowed to restrict it. So if anybody wants to subscribe to it, they can. But we're going to put a lot of this top 100 stuff behind the paywall, and hopefully people will come read it. And but we're going to gear most of that paywall stuff, especially the scouting service side. It's going to be exclusively geared for college coaches, and we're not going to really worry about too much whose family subscribes to it, what they read, if they like it or not. Probably will make some friends, and maybe not make some friends. Maybe have some people who don't like what they read, but we're starting to put more and more stuff behind the paywall. And then, of course, this weekend we're going to be covering the Charlie Hughes shootout and helping Alec as well. So with that coverage. So look forward to the weekend and look forward to seeing some more basketball this week.
Absolutely, and we'll be there to cover it as well tomorrow. Kevin Brockway, Mike DeCourcy, Chronic Hoosier, and we'll be talking name, image, likeness with attorney Kyle Robbins. Thanks a lot, Jim. I can't thank you enough. Big thanks to Dustin for joining us earlier, and Kevin Brockway as well. I hope, most importantly, to you guys, without you all, there is nothing else for us to do. Go out, enjoy your day. We'll be back tomorrow with lots more. Until then, for Jim Reamer, I'm Jim Coyle, and for John, the producer, I'll see you on the radio.